Hi everyone, welcome to another Yarn Scrap Friday with me, Laura, and a mini crochet along as well over the next 2 Fridays. And in part 1 today, I'm going to be showing you how to make this gorgeous sunflower and just the basic flower. Then in part 2, I'm going to be showing you how to turn that into a realistic sunflower, mini sunflower, with the green and the wire adding a stem. So hopefully you will join me in making some sunflowers. Let's begin. Okay, so for this tutorial we're going to be using a sport baby weight yarn, so that's a yarn weight of 2, and you're going to need 3 colours. You need a brown, a golden yellow colour, and also some green as well, so got that here. And with that you're also going to need a yarn tapestry needle as well, and with this yarn I'm using a 3mm crochet hook, and you're also going to need a pair of scissors and optional extras if you want to make the stem as well in part 2. Then you're going to need some Florist wire, and this is about 0.3mm. I'll put the details in the description below to the exact weight of this, but quite a thin green yarn here that's easy to bend. And you're also going to need some optional, if you want to make the stem, some Florist tape as well. So this is this special tape called Florist tape, and when you stretch it, it becomes slightly sticky. So you can pick that up off Amazon. And also you're going to need some wire cutters as well to cut the wire, obviously. So in part 1, I'm going to show you how to make the basic flower. So that includes the middle part here and the petals. And then in part 2, I'll show you how to add a stem and this green part as well, if you want to turn it into a proper sunflower. So we're going to start off with the brown yarn, and we're going to grab our hook and do a slip knot. And we're going to do 8 single crochet into a magic circle or chain 4 loop. So I'll do the chain 4 loop method, which is a bit easier for beginners on camera. So I'm going to chain 1, 2, 3 and 4. So chain 4. Going to put our hook into our first chain, bring the yarn through the first chain and straight through the loop on your hook, and now you've got a little loop of chains, if I can get it through, and into there we're going to do 8 single crochets. This pattern's in US terminology, so in UK terminology that's going to be 8 double crochet. I'm going to do a little chain 1 though first, just for leverage. Just don't count that as a stitch, ignore that. Then put your hook into the center, careful not to put it into your chain, your first chain, which can look quite big. Bring it through the center, then just wrapping it around the chains. We're going to work 8 single crochet. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 more, 8. So 8 single crochet, and then if you've carried your yarn, even with a chain 4 loop, you should be able to just pull that tail end and bring in that center hole. And then we're going to slip stitch into our first single crochet. So 2, 4, 6, 8. Find your first single crochet. I'm just going to slip stitch into there to join the round. So that's the end of the first round. So for round 2, what we're going to do is we're going to work into our front loops only. We're going to create some picots. So we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, and 3. So chain 3, and then going back into the same stitch you just slip stitched into, we're going to do a slip stitch, but rather than go under both loops like we normally would, just want to go under that front loop only, because we want to save those back loops for later. So we're going to slip stitch into that front loop, and then we're going to slip stitch into the next front loop as well. So not the whole stitch, just the front loop. Slip stitch into there and repeat. So chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, and slip stitch in the same front loop, and then slip stitch in the next front loop. I'm going to do that all the way around back to the beginning. So we chain 3, 1, 2, 3, create a cute little picot, slip stitch in the same front loop to begin, and then slip stitch in the next front loop. And repeat, chain 3, 2 and 3, slip stitch in the same front loop, and then slip stitch in the next front loop, then chain 3 and 3. So just doing the last picot, slip stitch in the same front loop, and then we want to slip stitch in the first skipped back loop, and you should have 8 of these little tiny little petals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So then what you want to do is just behind this first picot will be your first skipped back loop. So what you want to look for is this little bit of yarn here is actually your slip stitch. So just to the left of that is your first skipped back loop, and it'll be right in the middle of this picot. So we want to find that skipped back loop and slip stitch into there to join the round. Okay, then we're going to move on to round 2. And again, we're going to do a little chain 1 to begin, ignore that as a stitch. Then going back into the same skipped back loop, so back into there, we're going to do 2 single crochet. So 1 and another one in the same stitch. And try and keep your single crochets quite loose so they're easy to find. And then we're going to do 2 single crochet in each skipped back loop, and you should end up with a stitch count of 16, so 8 times 2. So if you want to count up to 16, that might be easier. So find the next skipped back loop and do 2 single crochet in there. 1 and 2. And again in the next skipped back loop, 2 single crochet. So just repeat that all the way around. 1 and 2 until you've got a stitch count of 16. Okay, so that's 6, then next 2, 7 and 8. 9 and 10. Let's go up to the last 2, 15 and 16. And the last skipped back loop. So it's a good idea to count, because sometimes you might think there's more skipped back loops and you start imagining them, so just check your stitch count is 16. Then find your first single crochet and slip stitch into there to join the round. Okay, so we've got this, something that looks like this, hopefully. And what we're going to do now is the same thing as what we did on the first round. So we're going to start off with a chain 3, 1, 2 and 3, and going back into the same single crochet you just slip stitched into, we're going to do a slip stitch but just in the front loop again. Slip stitch into there, then slip stitch into the next front loop only, so not both loops, just the front loop. Slip stitch into there, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, slip stitch in the same front loop, then slip stitch in the next front loop only, then chain 3. So repeat that all the way around until you've got 16 picots this time. So I shall do that, then I'll come back. Okay, so just working on the last picot, and just make sure you've got 16 picots and you know which last front loop you need to work in. So hopefully it looks something like this, and then what we want to do is once we've slip stitched in that same front loop again to after that last picot, we need to find the first skipped back loop. And again, if we turn this over, This little bit of yarn here is actually the slip stitch. So just to the left of that is your first skipped back loop. So we're going to slip stitch into there and do a chain 1. Don't count that as a stitch. And this time we're going to work 1 single crochet in each skipped back loop around. So we're keeping a stitch count of 16. So we're going to go back into there, same front loop, and do 1 single crochet. And we're going to do 1 single crochet in each skipped back loop. So find the next back loop and do single crochet. And just work that all the way around, keeping a stitch count of 16. 3, 4, 5, 15, and the last one, 16. Okay, so when you've got 16, you want to find your first single crochet and slip stitch into there. And we're going to repeat these picots again. So we're going to do a little chain 1. Actually, we're not chain 1, we're chaining 3. 1, 2, 3. So we go straight into a picot. And then going back into the same single crochet just slip stitched into, again, rather than go onto both loops, we're going to slip stitch under just the front loop. And then we'll slip stitch in the next front loop only. And repeat that, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, slip stitch in the same front loop, then slip stitch in the next front loop. Okay, let's repeat that all the way around. Chain 3, slip stitch in the same front loop, and slip stitch in the next front loop. Chain 3. Just coming up to the last picot, slip stitch, chain 3, slip stitch in the same front loop. Then we want to find our first skipped back loop. So again, this little bit of yarn here that looks like a skipped back loop is a previous slip stitch. Just ignore that. And then to the left of that is our first skipped back loop. Slip stitch into there, and we're going to repeat the second to last round. So we're going to just do a chain 1, go back into that skipped back loop, the same one, and do 1 single crochet in each previous skipped back loop around. So we're keeping a stitch count of 16. So it's 1, next skipped back loop, 2, next single crochet in the next back loop, 3. Let's repeat that all the way around. 1 single crochet in each back loop. 4. 5. And then once you've finished, we're going to just slip stitch into our first single crochet to join the round. So you've just done 1 single crochet in each skipped back loop around, keeping a stitch count of 16. And we're going to cut our yarn and pull that through. And what we want to do is we want to get all our tail ends to the center throughout this pattern. So I'm just going to sew back into that same stitch. And then we're going to, and we could use this for sewing, but it's a little bit short actually, so I'm just going to sew this to the center because we need some tail ends to create a little bit of volume when we make the stem. So I might use a separate bit of yarn for joining the pieces. I'll explain later. But we're going to get our tail end to the center along with our other tail end, and we want to keep these long, so keep all your tail ends. So that's the middle part complete, and now we're going to move on to the yellow petals, which is worked as a separate piece. So we're going to put that to the side. Going to grab our golden yellow colour. You could use an orange or a different type of yellow if you wanted to. And we're going to do a slip knot to begin. And we're going to do the same as the beginning of the brown, just without the picots. So we're going to do a chain 4 loop, 1, 2, 3 and 4. You could also do a magic circle if you prefer. Slip stitch into our first chain, straight for the loop on our hook, and into there, like the brown part, we're going to do 8 single crochets. So in UK terms, that's 8 double crochet. I'm going to do a little chain 1 first, just for leverage. Don't count that as a stitch. So going into the center, not the first chain, bring the yarn through, wrapping it around the chains, work a single crochet. We want 8 of those. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And hopefully if you've carried your tail, you should be able to just pull that hole in a little bit. I'm going to slip stitch into our first single crochet to join. And we should have something that looks like that. So 8 single crochet. Then for the next round, we're going to do chain 1 and going back into the same stitch you just slip stitched into. I'm going to work under both loops as normal and do 2 single crochet in each stitch around. So 1 and another one in there, 2. And 2 single crochet in the next stitch as normal, so no front loops, just work normally. 2 in there, and just work 2 single crochet in each stitch around until you've got a stitch count of 16. 1 and 2, so we're doubling up. Okay, so the last stitch, 2 single crochet in there, 1 and 2. And this little bit stitch here is what I call the fake stitch, so ignore that, check your stitch count is 16 and slip stitch into your first single crochet. Okay, so you should have 16 stitches by the end of round 2. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start creating the petals, and we do this in 2 stages. So we're going to start off with working half a petal around. So start off with chain 11. So chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So chain 11. And we're going to slip stitch in our second chain from our hook. So we don't count the loop on a hook. There's our first chain, there's our second. And it's a good idea because we're going to have to work into these chains twice. So on the first time, make sure you just work under 1 loop. It's a lot easier to see the chain the second time round. And we're going to do a slip stitch into there. Then in the next chain, we're going to do 1 single crochet. So 1 single crochet in the next chain and 1 single crochet in the next chain as well. Then we're going to do 1 half double crochet in the next chain. So in UK terms, that's a half treble. So a half double crochet in the next chain. Then we're going to do 1 double crochet in the next chain, the next 2 chains, so yarn over. So the next chain, do a double crochet. So in UK terms, this is a treble. And we want to double crochet in the next chain as well. Okay, then we're going to start coming back down. So we're going to do a half double crochet in the next chain. half double crochet. Then we're going to do 1 single crochet in the next 2 chains, single crochet in the next chain, and a single crochet in the next chain. Then we're going to slip stitch in the last chain, should have 1 left, slip stitch into there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch on the main circle, but just in the front loop. So find the next stitch on the main circle, but just slip stitch in the front loop only. So just the front loop. Okay, then we just do the same thing again. We're going to chain 11, so chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and do the same thing again in the second chain from our hook. We work a slip stitch, then we do 1 single crochet in the next 2 chains, so a single crochet in the next chain, single crochet in the next chain. Then in the next chain we do a half double crochet, so a half double crochet in the next chain. Then a 1 double crochet in the next 2 chains, double crochet in there, double crochet in the next chain. Then we come back down with a half double crochet in the next chain. Pull through all 3. 1 single crochet in the next 2 chains. Single crochet in there. Single crochet in there. And then in the last chain we do a slip stitch. And then again we find the next stitch on the main body, so nice fresh stitch, so not the one we just worked into, this stitch here, but we slip stitch in just the front loop. And then we go straight into our chain 11. So I will repeat that all the way around till I've got 16 half petals, and I will come back and show you what to do next. So 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so just coming up to the last, finishing the last petal, half petal, the slip stitch. And hopefully you've got something that looks like this. You should have 16 of these half petals. And what we want to do now is create the second half of the petals. So what we're going to do straight away is we're going to find our first half petal, and we're going to work back into this with the same stitches. So hopefully you can see the chains you worked into. And we're going to find that very first chain of our first petal and go into there immediately after your last half petal and do a slip stitch. We're going to do the same stitches. Then in the next chain, so just look for the single crochet, the next stitch, and just above there you should see the chain, and we just want to work into there with a single crochet. And then the next chain, there's our previous single crochet on the opposite side, just above there is our chain, single crochet, so we're going to mirror the other side. Then the next chain, it was a half double crochet, half double crochet. Then we want to do 1 double crochet in the next 2, so double crochet in the next chain, double crochet in the next chain, then a half double crochet in the next chain, then we did 1 single crochet in the next 2 chains, so a single crochet in there, single crochet in there, and we want to end on a slip stitch. So in the very last chain, it's a little bit difficult to see, but in there we do a slip stitch. Okay, and now we're at the top of our petal and we've completed our first petal, but we need to get back down the other side. So what we're going to do is find the stitches on the left hand side, go into that first stitch, and if my camera wants to focus today, do a slip stitch, and we're just going to slip stitch down the edge, so go into the next stitch, slip stitch down the edge back to the main part of the flower. So we're just going to slip stitch down the edge, back to the main part of the flower, almost there, and then just repeat that for all the other petals. So I've got 2 more, and I think there's one more, which is our previous slip stitch into there. And once you've got back to the main body, we want to find our next half petal and the next first chain, and we go straight into there. Come on, focus on the right part. And slip stitch into there and work our way up the next petal. So the next chain, 1 single crochet. Next chain, 1 single crochet. Next chain, a half double crochet. Next 2 chains, double crochet, so 1 double crochet in the next chain, double crochet in the next chain, half double crochet in the next chain, then 1 single crochet in the next 2 chains, single crochet in there, single crochet in there, and right at the end we finish on a slip stitch. And again we work our way back down the petal with slip stitches, so we find that first stitch. Come on, camera, focus. Doesn't want to focus on the right thing today. Slip stitch in there and just slip stitch back to the main body, and just repeat that for all the other petals until you end up back at the beginning. And you should still have 16 petals, and we would have completed the yellow part of our sunflower. Okay, so once you finish slip stitching, so we slip stitch in those single crochets, and then we slip stitch in that previous slip stitch, that last one on the end. Slip stitch into there. Once we're there, we then find the next half petal, and again find that first previous chain and work up our next petal with a slip stitch. And single crochet in the next 2. So just repeat that all the way around back to the beginning, and I will do that, and then I shall come back and we'll have a look at what we've got. Half double crochet. Okay. Okay, so just coming up to the end of the very last petal, just slip stitching down the edge and get that last slip stitch, and then we can just slip stitch in the first skipped back loop. So it's going to be, that's the previous slip stitch, so there's our first skipped back loop. Yeah, so slip stitch into the skip back loop and we are finished with the yellow. So we can cut our yarn, pull that through, and what we're also going to do first off is we're going to sew this tail end to the centre, because we want all our tail ends in the middle. So I'm just going to sew that to the middle, to the centre, because we need to use these if we're making a stem. So you don't have to do this if you're not making the stem, but if you are, we're going to get all our tail ends in the middle. Okay, so that's our finished yellow part, and we bring in our brown part, and now all we need to do is sew these together. So I'm going to sew these tail ends through the middle first to get these onto the back of the yellow. Okay, so now these brown pieces and the yellow pieces, we've got lots of extra threads for when we're making the stem, and this is really important just at the beginning because it just creates a thicker stem and then gets thinner towards the end when it's just the wire. So, but what we're going to do now is we are going to get some brown yarn and we're just going to sew the brown piece to the yellow piece. So I'm just going to take a little bit of brown yarn. You could have used the tail end if you wanted to, but I didn't. So I'm going to take a fresh piece and it's going to tie a knot in the end. And what we're going to do is we're going to match up these 16 stitches here with the 16 stitches on here from round 2. So these are the petals here and they're coming out of these stitches here. So what we want to do is find a stitch on here, anywhere will do. That tail end can catch on the inside. Keeping those other tail ends on the inside. What we're going to do is find where the row 2 is and we're going to sew into there and then back out through one of these brown stitches. And then back through another brown stitch and catch some of the yellow and come back up. We're going to do that all the way around, joining the brown to the yellow. We go through the next brown stitch. Then down through the next brown stitch and we're going to catch the next bit of yellow. Okay, so I'm going to sew this off camera because it's going to be a lot easier and come back and show you the half finished sunflower. End of part 1 anyway. So we're going to finish up by sewing to the back, and again we're going to get our tail end to the centre at the back. Okay, like so. So that is really the end of the main sunflower. So hopefully it looks something like this, and you've got lots of petals. You should have 16 petals, I think, in total. So that's the end of part 1. So in part 2, if you want to, you can either leave that there and you have a beautiful sunflower as is, or if you want to join me in part 2 next Friday, then, or it already might be up depending on when you're watching this, then what we're going to do is we're going to add the green part and the wire and the stem and turn this into a more realistic mini sunflower. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. I hope you managed to follow along and make some gorgeous sunflowers, but don't forget to join me in part 2 if you want to turn it into a more realistic flower by adding a stem. So do check out that video. It's either you're watching this Friday and it's coming next Friday, or it's already live, and I'll put links in the description below if it's already live. So, and I want to say a huge thank you to my Membership Plus members on my website for helping make Yarn Scrap Friday possible, and my patrons as well. And do check out my Membership Plus area on my website for extra content. We got podcasts, we've got behind the scenes vlogs and exclusive patterns, so I'll put the links below to check that out. But I will see you soon for some more crochet crafting fun. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.